Welcome to Observations. For those of you who are in the inner circle, if you will, not that we don't have any organization and there's no hierarchy in our group, but there are a number of us who are part of the covenant who communicate 4 or 5 times a week and share ideas and share correspondence that we have with others. And if you're among those who are listening to this program, you know that I engaged, I think it was between the various letters and responses and rebuttals, at probably now 150 pages and 30 some odd communications, with a fellow who will go nameless, who wrote me and said that, in essence, the purpose of the letter was to say, it isn't remotely possible. I cannot believe that the learned and scholastic translations from esteemed Bible publications can all be wrong and your translations be right. Pray tell, what are your credentials? What university and seminary did you attend to qualify you to even attempt such an undertaking? Do you recall that letter, Kirk?
I do. I'm trying to think what Moses' credentials were. Who wrote it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What school did Moses attend to prepare him to convey the Torah? Yeah, to the Torah. Yeah. What seminary did you attend? Anyway, it was really an interesting discussion, and our good friend Richard, who not only listens to these but posts them on his blessyahowah.com website. Don't panic. We're not going to mention the guy's name. We're not going to even repeat anything that he had to say beyond this introduction. But we are going to spend some time after Kirk shares a story or two on what I learned as I was progressing and searching Yahowah's Word for a better understanding of Yahowah's provision for life and what we need to do should we want access to it, because God has announced that He has withdrawn it. So, we will turn to that in a moment. It's one of the most comprehensive sojourns of discovery I've taken in quite some time. It took me 4 full days to, in fact, if you want to deal with the translations that led to it, I have a little over a week and what we're going to share on the next few programs. But Kirk, you said you had a story that you wanted to share, and a bit of serendipity in terms of discussion, as you were sitting in an automotive body shop and had some time to verify if something that I shared last Friday night, because last Friday night we spent almost the entire time talking about one translation, one sentence, and 2 words within that sentence as to what they actually mean and how challenging it is and how really rewarding it is to closely examine and carefully consider what God had to say. So first, what's your story, and then we'll go into the investigation.
The first one is regarding a friend of mine who about a year ago I spoke to her about Yahowah, and she was very receptive. She had already walked away from Christianity. She had been a Catholic and so on. And so she was very receptive. She immediately started doing what Terry and I did when we first were confronted with this. We read, we started with yada yada. She started with an introduction to God and yada yada. In fact, I think she bought Introduction to God in a hardback form. And she was reading every day, and I would see her once a week, and we would chat. So we had long discussions, and she was just soaking it up like so many of us do. And a little background on her: she's a widow. And she's the primary caregiver for her 24-year-old or 26, he's somewhere between 24 and 26-year-old son who has autism. And so as she was reading and so forth, and I should say that he's what we would call a low-functioning autistic child, and she's been his caregiver and dedicated most of her life now, all his life, to him. And when he was born, they didn't circumcise.
Mothers are special.
Yes, mothers are extraordinarily special. She's walked away from a lot and suffered a lot and done without. So she's a real special person to me.
Yeah, she sacrificed a lot on behalf of her son. So, hey, the truth about Yahowah and the set-apart spirit ought to be very appealing to her because she shares a lot in common with God.
That's my thoughts exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but she has a uncircumcised son, and she understands the covenant agreement, and she understands that children can't participate, or anyone can't participate, male, if they don't if they're not circumcised.
Right.
So she did what she went to the doctor and wanted to have it done, and they kind of rebuffed her. There's a rather large cost involved, and she is very much on a budget. So that's
I've heard as much as $5,000.
Right. And the insurance wouldn't cover it, so she also was afraid of his reaction because of being autistic. It's all new to him, and it would be kind of difficult.
Right.
And so it was quite a block, I think, an obstacle for her. Because she wants her son. Just like we want all our family members to be with us. I mean, he can communicate with her. He knows his mama's love and so forth. So she wants him to be part of the family. But she knows this is a difficult thing, and she didn't know what to do.
Yeah, it's one of those things when some women wrote me originally as I was talking about the terms and conditions of the covenant, and you know, a man cannot engage in a covenant unless he is circumcised. And the instruction is actually for parents to circumcise their children, their sons, on the 8th day. My response to women has always been, who is it that you think God is talking to when he says circumcise your sons on the 8th day? You know, he's talking more even to moms than he is to dads.
Yeah.
And so, you know, circumcision is not just a male thing. It's about moms making sure that their sons are circumcised because it's their way of affirming their commitment to the covenant and to marking their children with the sign of the covenant so they remember and so that the parent remembers to raise them so that they come to know God and choose to participate in his family. So it is very much a woman's responsibility. So as a mother, I congratulate her. She knows this is important.
Well, she knows it's important, but it was such a, you know,
I know. There's a lot of issues.
Yeah, she was getting to the point where, you know, she was actually thinking, well, maybe it's better that I die without, you know, if he's going to die and he's not going to be with me and I can't say, you know, do this, that, and the other. So in any case, it became quite an obstacle. Last week, she took her child to see that doctor because he had an infection down there. And and the doctor was not there. They gave her to another doctor. And that doctor examined her son and said to her, he says, look, I've just examined your son, and I have a recommendation. He said, I need to circumcise your son to stop this infection.
Right.
And I'll arrange it with the insurance company that it takes place, and they'll cover the cost. And I've done over 5,000 circumcisions, he told her. And she said, well, what about him hurting and everything? Because this is very difficult to care for someone who's in great pain, doesn't know why.
Yeah, at that point, I think if I had been her, I'd just say, thank you very much. May Yahweh bless you.
This is basically where it went. But he said, look, this is not... It's not going to hurt. We got a way to do it. I'll do it. He won't feel a thing. So her response to him was, she looked at him and she said, okay. And then she shared that story with me, and I about fell out of my life.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? You know, I got 2 letters.
If you're walking towards Yahowah, and there's a big rock in the way, he'll move the rock.
Yeah.
If you can't move it, he'll move it. If you can't walk over it, he'll move it.
That's right. Yeah, he doesn't want you to be lazy. He doesn't want you to sit there on your duff. He wants you to...
every plan she could to get this done. Didn't know what to do. She decided something.
You know, I received 2 letters just this week on adult men who had come to know Yahweh, reading yada yada, an introduction to God, to come to know Yahweh, were fully engaged and committed to the covenant, but were not circumcised. And guess what? Both made exactly the same decision.
Right.
Doesn't matter what it costs.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about inheriting the universe. We're talking about being invited into Yahowah's home. We're talking about living forever. Is there anything that I could ever spend money on that would have that kind of return?
Kind of return? Wow.
Yeah, so two adult men today. You know, it is amazing that over these past 10 years, probably that's the average. A couple a week. People that write and say, you know, in fact, this week was 4 people. That 3 of the 4 I didn't even know. I had never met, never heard of, that wrote and said, you know, I have been reading for years. Just quietly, made contact, and they might, you know, say, come to know Frank, or come to know Larry, or come to know you, or somebody, you know, that they've come to know, and and that maybe it's Richard, but that they are part of the covenant. And you know, I've been doing this now for 15 years. 2 or 3 a week gets up to be over 1,000 people around the world. We've made a heck of a difference.
Well,
yeah, we haven't done anything other than that we have taken the time to investigate what Yahowah has said, to reveal His words as completely and accurately as we can, to share the insights that we've been able to derive by this study, and to make that available to anyone who is interested. There's no sacrifice in doing any of that. It's all been extremely rewarding and fun, but it has made an enormous difference in people's lives.
It is, boy, what a journey.
Yeah. So you said that you were
Yes.
spending some time at an auto repair shop. I mean, this is a fascinating story. I mean, I just want to see old Terry there at the. Excuse me, Kirk, your wife's Terry. Kirk at the old automotive repair shop, and you decided, I'm bored out of my mind. I need to be doing something.
Yeah. Well, I knew it was going to be a while, so I took my notes down, and I was reading ahead. I know we're still in 6, and we won't get there today either. But I was reading 8, and it was.
This is chapter 8 of Observations for Our Time.
Right,
which is a chapter for those that are listening here, since these have not been. I think they are posted now on Richard's site, blessyahowah.com. The first 8 chapters are, but chapter 8 is the entire chapter is a detour. We were covering the story of God's rebuke of religious man in Yahshua, and 3 times in succession he mentioned Zion. And so I was curious and wanted to identify what Zion represents, where Zion was, what Zion means. And that led to a chapter where some 80 pages, and the entire chapter is a detour, because it turned out to be not have anything to do with the location of Zion, but instead who Zion is, and what Yahowah had to say about this individual that he has called Zion. Zion means signposted along the way. And the Zion is David.
Yes.
Yahowah's beloved son.
That's very obvious when you...
And and so the chapter is insights into the very complex and stunningly surprising relationship between Yahowah and Daud, and how real it is. And there are some insights and some discussions that I was mesmerized almost. So anyway, that's what chapter 8's about. It's about surprising communications that come from parts of of Yahowah's testimony that very few people pay much attention to.
Yeah.
The book is primarily based, that chapter, on Chronicles.
Yeah, not the sexy one.
No, Chronicles.
Let's go read Chronicles.
Chronicles. And who would have thought that such delicious nuggets could be found in Chronicles? Anyway, that's chapter 8. So anyway, you were there reading chapter 8.
So I took the 2 hours I'm waiting there, and I'm reading that, and I made a note. I said, okay, based on the conversation we had last week where you said you went through every aspect of the word completely and redid even Asher, your favorite word.
Yeah, my favorite word. Yeah, Asher's the word. I mean, not for Asher, I would not be here.
Yeah.
I mean, that one word is that...
I wouldn't be here. I mean, if it wasn't for
Yeah.
that was my trigger, and whatever it is, it all leads to the same place.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I wrote down off in the column. I said, okay, now look up Dana and look up Asher.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the ordinary thing that I do, which is 6 or 7 lexicons, and I write all the stuff down. And what I found, I started with Dana, and I went all the way down. I said, my gosh, there's 375 of these related Dana words. So I said, okay. So I haven't done anything else this week other than these 2 words. So I went through all of that, bump, and then...
Henna would have to be between Asher and Henna, they have to be 2 of the most interesting words.
Mm-hmm.
And what's amazing is that in English Bibles, you're going to have Asher rendered as if it were some kind of a mix between a preposition and a pronoun. I mean, it's a whom or which or where or that kind of thing. And they never go, the word has meaning. They never talk about the meaning of the word. And Henna is rendered as behold 99.9% of the time, and you just behold. Okay, what does behold mean? People just say, well, behold, is just okay. Say it because it sounds religious, and then go on. Behold, and yet, oh my goodness, this word is extraordinary. This word tells you the proper perspective from which you can capitalize on Yahweh's provision for life. This word is every bit as much an explanation of his name as anything ever written. So anyway, you were looking up these words.
I looked up Asher and I looked up Bana rather than Henna because we covered that a lot. But I went through Bana, and because it says to build, and it sounds straightforward in this fashion, and to rebuild and to restore and to have children. I mean, what are you going to build a house?
Do you know where the single most interesting reference to Bana would be if you were to pay any attention to what is considered to be the basis of Christianity?
Go ahead.
All right. When Yosha spoke to Shimon Kevesh, and he told him that upon this rock I will build my mikra. And it was upon is all in Hebrew. Zoth is this. Rock is sur. I will build is Bana. And my mikra would be the title of Yahweh's 7 invitations to meet based on the verb kara, to be invited, to be called out, and to meet with God. That's what he said, and the word that he used was Bana.
Yeah.
Now Christians will think, no, he said, upon this rock I will build my church. No. That is absolutely and unequivocally not what he said. He used Bana, and he said he was going to build his mikra, his invitations to be called out and to meet with God. Okay, so you were studying Bana.
Well, I went through 375 of these guys, and I'm going all the way down, and I'm saying, so I get down to about 300 and, I don't know, 60-something, and I saw this word. It was Ben Yah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, wow, that's interesting, because it's got Yah's name in it. So let's look up Ben Yah.
Mm-hmm.
And it means Yahweh has built up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fascinating. That's easy to find. But here was the thing that really tickled me to death here.
Mm-hmm.
And in light of having already read the thing where the email that you shared with the guy who said, I'm going to stick with my Christian people who write this stuff, their scholars, I went to the 3 most Christian-friendly lexicons to look this up. Same. Brown's, Rivers, Briggs, Strong's, and the New American Standard Concordance.
Yeah, those are the 3.
That's the 3 sources that are the most relied upon by a Christian.
Right. And then almost always give the Christian myth before they will even attempt to define the word.
Well, guess what they did on number 1141E?
What's that?
They said that this is from Bana, and the word Yah, which is the proper name of the God of Israel.
And oh, by the way, he is the God of Israel, that is true. But he also happens to be the one and only God of the universe.
So my question, and in the parentheses it has Yahowah. And it says, and this Yahowah, this Yah has been written 6,824 times when you look that part up.
And by the way, in the Masoretic text, that is correct.
All right.
But the Dead Sea Scrolls reveal another 132 times that Yahweh was written in the original text, that the Masoretes edited out of their text, and if you add those two together, you end up with 7,000.
7,000. Now, so you've got 7,000, the number we key on all the time to show his plan. We've got his name, and we have his name spelled correctly. We have his nickname, Yah, being spelled correctly. We are declaring that this is the name of the God of Israel, which is Yahweh's chosen people.
That is building a family.
It's building a family.
A home for his family.
So you've got Yah's building up, and why would they put that in there, these great scholars, and then not put it in everywhere else? So who's
it's pretty amazing, isn't it?
First time, or are they lying this time?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that Bana is essentially the Hebrew word for son, ben.
Yes.
Made feminine with the hey at the end of it. And you say, wait a minute. Well, that sounds like, what the folks in North Carolina are trying to get away from. You can't have, bathrooms for whatever. You can't have a son that's a girl. Oh, is Yahweh promoting transgenderism? No. The Hebrew word, in Hebrew, there is no neuter name for child. Sons and daughters. Well, if you want to create a neuter name for child, to be inclusive, an inclusive name for child that would include sons and daughters, Bana would be it, wouldn't it? First two letters are son, the last letter is daughter, female. So Bana would be inclusive. So it speaks of a family that is inclusive, sons and daughters. And it speaks of Bana's, the primary definition is to build a home and establish a family with sons and daughters.
Why would you build a home if you're not going to put a family in it?
Well,
come on.
Ben is the Hebrew word for son. Ben is written with only two letters. One is the Bah or Beth, which is depicts the floor plan of a home with only one way in, and so it is a home. And the Nun, the other letter, is drawn in the form of a sperm.
Yes.
A child in a home is Ben.
So if you look at it that way, you've got the family home is for the inheritance. The children.
And Bana, right. That is correct. So Bana would be, it's the home for the children who are observant, standing up, noticing, and reaching up.
Observing.
Yeah, observing God.
Walking with Yahweh.
There you go.
Down the path. So I got pages on those two words just because I thought I'd save up for when we actually get into that section.
Yeah, we will. And amazing concept. I mean, just what you can learn is so phenomenal if you just take the time. And what was so interesting, of course, is the Christians are when this fellow wrote me, I would constantly say, you're missing the point. This is what God said, and he would constantly say, well, I can't believe that, it's what the argument is called argumentum ad populum. It means to use the fallacy of believing that because many people believe the same thing that it must be true.
Yeah.
And rather than doing a bit of investigation, studying, going and doing some research to determine whether or not those are the words that were conveyed and whether or not they are properly defined, which would have taken the individual 30 minutes to do. If you're talking about words in one sentence, and maybe an hour to do. Instead, spent days writing back to me and says, I still can't believe that what you say is true.
Yep.
And you just go, huh? I mean, what is it about actually taking some responsibility, some initiative, and looking up the words yourself?
Well, if it's disturbing you enough to send you an email, then why didn't you look it up to prove he's wrong if it's disturbing you?
Correct.
And then when you find out he ain't lying about it, because there it is, and any darn fool can figure that out. I mean, when Moshe gave the Torah, handed it down after Yahowah dictated to it, and he handed it down to these people he had just pulled out. They were slaves. Most of them were illiterate. Don't tell me they went to school and they were all educated.
Oh, yeah.
And the Loi were not particularly educated. And
there were no universities.
There
were no seminaries, no universities.
Did they go to?
Correct. There were no seminaries, no universities.
But he said, observe the Torah.
By the way, you didn't even have to be literate to read the Torah, because all of the letters were drawn in the forms of pictures, and all you had to do is look at the letters, and you could read the words.
And if you could, you ask the Lord, what does that mean? And he would say, okay, then, look, let me show you. Because he would teach him. He didn't tell him. He was teaching him. Look at this letter. This is what we use for a house. This is what it means.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
It's only 22 of them. They're all drawn as symbols. And what I do is take an hour and say, let me draw the symbols out. And most of them are just so obvious. There's an eye. There's a foot. There's a floor plan for a home. There's a hand reaching down and out to it. There's a person standing up, reaching up, and looking up. There's a shepherd's staff.
And did you ever notice about the shepherd's staff where it was always drawn with the hook down at the bottom?
Yeah.
Every time you see a picture, artists always run it with the hook up on the top, where like Moshe is standing or Charleston Heston is standing there with the hook on the top. I thought it interesting that the hook down at the bottom was significant, because what do you do with the hook down at the bottom?
You save sheep. Yeah, you save your sheep. That's correct. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. And so it just flabbergasted. And in this particular case, the passage that he finally admitted that had caused him to have a conniption fit was found in an introduction to God, and in an introduction to God, it gives you, long before you read this passage, because it comes from the word chapter of an introduction to God, it gives you every letter in Hebrew, what the letters mean, it gives you every stem, every conjugation, every mood, every interlinear that you need to use, every dictionary that would be of benefit to you, where you go to find the oldest manuscripts, and then how you go about translating words with this. Yeah. And in this particular statement, his conniption fit was over Yahowah, because all of the English Bibles that he favored translated or rendered Yahowah as arms. So the first thing I point out is this: Yahowah is not Zeroim. It's singular. It's not plural. It's not arms.
No arms.
No, there's no. So it's not arms. And I have always taken the approach of, since there is a Hebrew word for arm, and it's not Yahowah, and since there is a Hebrew word for shoulder, and since there is a Hebrew word for hand, and all these kind of things, that I've always taken the approach that if there's a unique word that you're looking at, why do you use that word? Why is it singular when the only the definitions you seem to be able to read for it are all plural? What's going on here? And then one of the things that I learned, I must have learned this a decade ago, is that there is a unique word that requires a definition for it to be credible. The first time God uses it, he provides the definition. Yeah. And so what I did is I looked at the first time Yahweh used Yahowah, and the second time, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. And you know what I found out? every time he used it, he was talking about the sacrificial lamb of Passover. All right, I would like to embark on a very interesting voyage of discovery, but I want to do it in context. I had gotten, let's see, how far although I think right now the 9th chapter is 90 pages long. I've gone back to the beginning of it and to add things that I thought were important to develop all the way through the chapter. So I'm at page 15 is where we're going to engage in the 9th chapter, which is not published anywhere, so there's no place to go read it, but we're still going to talk about it. And the way the chapter began is that since we had made the detour in chapter 8 to consider Zion and Zion's association with Dode David and Dode's relationship with Yahowah, I wanted to return to Yahowah because my goal and observations is once we establish a foundation, I want to get from Yahowah 1 all the way through 14 because I know that by doing so, Yahweh is going to connect all of the dots for us. We're going to understand the connection between religion and Babylon, between the whore and Satan, as well as between Shaul, the wannabe apostle Paul, and Christianity. And I knew that God made that progression as he goes through Yahowah, Isaiah 1, all the way through 14. And so that was the goal. So as realizing that at this point we had already translated and considered all of chapter 1 and chapter 2, and recognizing all of chapter 1 and all of chapter 2 focus on a singular problem, that God intended and had done everything in his power to raise his children, to nurture them, to lift them up, to care for them, and that his children rejected him for religion, and that the thing that had separated God and man was in fact religion. And he goes on to talk about the religion of his people and how the religion of his people was the very thing that caused him to declare in the opening verse of the 3rd chapter that he was now withholding and withdrawing his provision to uphold life. And so I said, holy moly! Okay, this is powerful, that God has explained that he intended to have a family, that man rejected him in favor of religion, and that as a result, God was now withholding his provision for life. And I said, I don't think I'm going to get past verse 1 of chapter 3 and chapter 9. We need to stop everything and make absolutely certain we know what God's provision to uphold life is comprised of, because he's withdrawn it. And because he's withdrawn it, we need to understand, how do we get it back? I mean, there's very few things could be more important than that. And so what I noticed is that God began this statement with henna, which is just simply translated, we talked about that a moment ago, as behold. And as I was looking at henna, I said, there's something really interesting about henna, something I'd never considered before. That henna is written with 2 hays and a nun in the middle. Henna is family. Henna is a mother and a father standing up, looking up, and reaching up to God with a child in between them. Henna is the covenant. And I said, there's 2 other words that come to mind that have 2 hays in them. As a matter of fact, while the Babylonian name for this letter that was depicted by a person standing up, reaching up, and looking up to God is now hay, that's the Babylonian version, its original name was not hay. The original name for the letter is henna. And the letter means to look up, to pay attention. The letter is drawn exactly as it is defined. I looked at that and said, what other two words have a pair of H's in them?
Easy.
Well, the first one is amongst the most important verbs in the Hebrew language. Haya.
Haya.
Haya. When Yahowah introduced himself to Moshe, who of course was a seminary graduate, a profound theologian, with doctoral degrees hanging on his wall. And of course, knowing that no one could communicate God's word on his own, he immediately went to Moshe and said, you know what, you're not going to be doing this alone. We're going to form a committee. And so we're going to come up with a large committee, and you're all going to we have a curriculum and fancy plaques. No, he didn't say that. Anyway, what he said is that I am who I am. I am who I am. Haya. Asher. Haya. I am who I am. And he said, tell the children of Israel, I exist. Haya means I exist. It's the verb which defines Yahweh's name, because the next statement out of Yahweh as well. Tell them that Yahweh has sent you. Yahweh. Y-A-H. Haya. H-Y-H. Yeah, Haya not only tells you how to pronounce the first syllable of Yahweh's name, it tells you what the name means. And in that case, in the basis of the verb, which explains Yahweh's name, this time rather than henna, where you have two people standing up, a man and a woman with a child represented by the sperm in between them, in this case, in the basis for Yahweh's name, you have two people standing up, a man and a woman, a husband and wife, and in between them, Yahweh's hand reaching down and out to lift them up. Haya is, in fact, also the covenant and the basis of Yahweh's name. So I looked at Yahweh's name. How many Hays are there in Yahweh's name?
Me too.
Two of them, aren't there? So that maybe this word, this word that so many people just, toss away. I looked in Strong's because I wanted to know how many times it's used, and Strong's had this particular variation of it, the way it was pointed by the Masoretes, had 19. I said, no. Then I looked up, okay, well, they had like 5 other variations of it, and collectively, the 5 other variations totaled like 50. No, not impossible. Well, there were 1,000 of them. And so I decided, I'm going to go to the first use of henna, because something strikes me as, sometimes you just get in your mind's eye that this is really important. Grab a hold of this and don't let go until you understand how important it is. Because something in my gut, in my mind's eye told me that if you want to understand how we get God's provision to uphold life back, the explanation is in the first word of the first statement of the 3rd chapter of Yeshayahu, Isaiah, Hannah. So I've devoted this entire chapter to Yahweh's use of henna. And I was beginning to write about the discussion that Yahweh had with Noah. Because in the 6th chapter of Bereshit, Genesis, in the 13th verse, Yahweh uses henna to encourage Noah to pay attention, to consider what he has to say. Now, You know that it's funny because this fellow that wrote me said that you can't translate unless you consider the context, which of course he was crediting the religious scholars with doing in their translations, which of course they never do. And if I was religious about something, what I'm religious about is context. You will never see me ever go to, for example, if Hannah appears in the 13th statement of the 6th chapter and the conversation begins at the first verse of the 6th chapter, I'm not going to the 13th verse to start, even if it takes 2 weeks out of my life. I'm going to begin the conversation where the conversation began. So I started with Bereshith 6:1, knowing that I was going to get to one of the very earliest uses of henna. And since I knew that now he was talking to Noah, I had a hunch this was going to be an important one. Because what Yahowah is saying is that rather than provision for life, I gave mortal man life as a gift. But he was on the verge of taking it away. And he was going to explain to Noah why he was taking away the gift that he had given to mortal man. And in addition to that, he was going to tell Noah precisely what instructions he needed to follow to keep his family safe and so that his family's lives could be upheld. So this was if there ever was going to be an answer to henna and to what is the provision for life and how do we get it back, then I was going to find it here. Now what's interesting is that was not my first inclination, and we're going to start to 6:1 here in a moment. My first inclination was to go to henna's use in the discussions regarding the covenant, because every time Yahowah met with Abraham, somewhere in that conversation he used henna. And so I figured that what we ought to do is just track henna through the covenant. And so I wrote most of this chapter is already written as we track henna through the covenant. I'm now dealing with the 7th meeting between Yahowah and Abraham. And as I was writing, it says, before I finish this, I'm going to go back to the beginning, because the first mention of the covenant is not actually with Abraham. It's with Noah. And the first time that Yahowah gave instructions as to how to participate in the covenant wasn't with Abraham. It was with Noah. And while Yahowah asked Abraham to walk away from the land of Six, from the land of Babylon, from Sumer, where everything was based on Six. I mean, their entire way of reckoning time, of ordering space, of thinking, of their mathematical model was 60 days to counting. So I want you to walk away from that. But he, although identifying the country that he was in, which was Babel, the land of confusion, Yahowah doesn't explain what it is about them, the Babylonians, the Sumerians, that requires Abraham to leave them before he and Yahowah can have a discussion and engage in a relationship. But guess what? That's not the case with Noah. So there's a reason that Yahowah doesn't have to tell Abraham. He told Noah. And the story of Noah comes before the story of Abraham. So we ought to know what it was that he thought was so awful in man. And Kirk, what I came to find out is that what is awful in man is introduced to us, and the word that Christian theologians have absolutely butchered. You ever heard of the Nephilim? The Nephilim, if you prefer. Ever heard of them?
Yes.
Yeah. How many times have you heard that they're giants?
Well, there's all the Christian Bibles say they're giants.
Yeah, they're all giants. Every Christian Bible says they're giants. All of them. I have a few now that for a very short period of time, that in all the early ones, all of the early ones, first like 20, all were giants. All because of a mistake in the Septuagint that was copied into the Latin Vulgate that made its way into Wycliffe's first English translation that made it into all subsequent English translations, because the King James was a revision 5 times over of Wycliffe's translation of the Latin Vulgate. So it was, garbage in, garbage out. There's not a single connotation associated with large or tall in the root of Nephilim. Not one. But what the word means is religious, bowing down and being cut down in war. And so I was studying this word that explained what all this was about, and as I was doing it, I said, since I've heard so many myths, I mean, I must have been asked, I bet I've been asked 500 times, what can you tell me about the Nephilim? What do you think about them? It was obvious to me the first time I translated them. They were overtly religious and they were vicious. And then God said, and there were people very similar to them that continued to populate the world thereafter. And they're well known. You've heard of their names. And that's what God said. And yet I realized that there wasn't an English Bible that communicated any of that.
They can't.
So I decided, why not figure out why they are all wrong, why they all say the same thing, and how they all came to the wrong definition. Fascinating. I mean, how could they all be wrong?
Well,
and so I've devoted 15 pages just to sharing not only why they are all wrong, but coming up to a profound conclusion. One that is so much more well-researched and stark than I ever thought possible in terms of what I think now is an undeniable realization regarding the totality of the Christian New Testament. So, if you'll bear with me, let's go through this. We will not get through it today. We're not going to finish it this evening, but we will finish it in time. This section begins, Henna is used again in Bereshith, Genesis 6:13, with Yahowah encouraging Noah to look up and pay attention, because the land had become so overwhelmed with cruelty and violence. For there to be any hope of a relationship, he would have to eliminate the perpetrators and start all over again, with the 8 souls willing to respond to his life-saving instructions. Now, and if this story sheds light on the reason Yahowah was withholding his provision to sustain life in Isaiah 3:1, while also illustrating through Henna that God wanted Noah to understand his justifications for doing so, let's review it from the beginning to its conclusion, wherein the covenant was established for the first time based upon Noah's willingness to do what Yahowah had instructed. So God's message begins. Indeed, when the defilement and slain, the profane nature, the contemptible attitude, and disgraceful wounding of the descendants of Adam came to exist on an ongoing basis, it increased dramatically, growing to the point of being multiplied greatly in a myriad of ways, reaching into the tens of thousands, with them shooting arrows at one another within the area and before the presence of the descendants of Adam. Then daughters were born to them, and sons of the Almighty saw that the daughters of Adam indeed were desirable and valuable. So they grasped hold of and took them for themselves, women from any which they, as a result of their relationships and to benefit their ways, chose. Then Yahowah said, my spirit shall not remain or abide with the descendants of Adam forever, because indeed, in addition to this, he is flesh, and prone to proclaiming, publishing, and preaching news, which is considered good and beneficial by those who hear it. So for a period of time, it shall come to be that his days will be 120 years. There were, for a limited period of time, the Nephilim, those who prostrate themselves and are stillborn, falling in prayer, battle, and status, who are militaristic and thus meet an untimely death, existing in the region in those days, but also those bearing a resemblance to them in a slightly different form for some time thereafter. By association, the sons of the Almighty came to, making a habit of pursuing the daughters of man, the female descendants of Adam, and they conceived children for themselves. These warriors and political leaders, prominent individuals with an ability to fight who prevailed in their quest for military and political power, who were from a relatively long time ago, are individuals with reputations and with recognizable names. Now that's Bereshith 6, 1 through 4. I dare say that is nothing like what you have ever read in an English Bible.
No.
And the purpose now is not to analyze every word of that, with one exception. I want to spend a little time on 6:4, because we'll go back to this as we finish chapter 6, 7, and 8, and eventually in 9. We'll go through this material word for word. But let's spend a moment on Genesis, Bereshith 6:4. There were Haya, for a limited period of time. There actually and literally existed, called imperfect, the Nephilim. Nephylim. What does the YM at the end of it mean, Kirk?
Plural.
Plural. What does the Ha before Nephilim mean? The. So, is the Nephilim being used here as a common word to be translated, or as a title or name?
Well,
it's Ha Nephilim.
Yeah.
This is like saying there were the Americans, there were the Russians,
yeah.
There were the Romans,
yeah.
There were the Babylonians, there were the Nephilim. You cannot translate a word, Ha Nephilim, as there were giants. There's a definite article here. So it's the Nephilim. Now, when Yahowah is using a title, is it appropriate to transliterate the title, which means to convey the pronunciation of the title in the language that you're translating it into?
Well, names you transliterate. The others are translated.
You always have to transliterate a name. Titles?
Translate?
Titles. The answer to titles is that by far the most accurate way to handle a title is the way we handle Mikre. Mikre is the title that Yahowah uses to describe his 7 invitations to be called out and to meet. The definition or translation of Mikre is invitations to be called out and meet. So the best way to handle a title like Mikre is to transliterate it so that the title is conveyed, you know what he's talking about, and then to provide a translation of it so that you understand what the title means.
Yes. Well, that's what we do, isn't it? Yeah.
That is the way you handle a title. Ha Nephilim is a title. Transliterate it. There were the Nephilim, those who prostrate themselves and are stillborn, from the verbal root Nephal. All YM means it's plural. So the verbal root for Nephil is Nephal. But you know, you don't have to go very far to find the verbal root of Nephil. as Nephal. Nephal means to fall in prayer, battle, and status. Going from a higher position to a lower one. Those who were separated and die. Those who bow down, falling prostrate, to worship something on the ground.
Man, look what he's calling you.
Those who neglect and therefore are neglected. Those who attack to conquer. And an offensive military action, becoming inferior in the process. Those subject to miscarriage, and thus untimely death. Okay, I just went through the definition of the fall. Did you hear any word in there that screamed out to you, really big giants?
No.
In fact, it was the opposite, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would be, in context of everything we've covered so far, it would be a radical departure from what you all said. Times already, so.
Yeah. There is nothing with Nephal that speaks of big. Everything associated with Nephal speaks of diminished, bowing down, prostrating oneself, being diminished, suffering a miscarriage, having one's life shortened. Now, that's really important because, all the English Bibles translated that there were giants in the land. Is man taller today, or was he taller 5,000 years ago?
Well, he's much taller today.
Much taller, almost a foot taller. Has there been any paleontologist or archaeologist who has found a race of giants, the bones of a race of giants? Any? Ever?
Not to my knowledge.
No. Has there ever been a race of giants on the earth?
No.
No. So if Yahowah said that there were giants in the land, and we have absolute, unequivocal proof that man is taller today than he was then, and that while there might have been the occasional exceedingly tall person.
That's a pituitary gland. That's not,
that's right.
A race of people.
Since we know for certain there was no race of people ever that can be considered giants, when these nincompoops translate this word that speaks of being diminished as a result of religion and militancy, cutting people down, as giants, aren't they making God out to be a liar?
Well, sure, but they can't, because if you're King James him, you're not going to knock religion.
Yeah, that's right. So they have God come across as an ignorant nincompoop by saying that there were giants in the land. I read one of the. I was trying to, and I have a lot to say on this subject, and so I wanted to look up and say, how in the hell does somebody justify the King James, which is the sixth in the list of English translations using giants, and it's the eighth overall because the Septuagint is where the mistake occurred, and then it was copied by Jerome in the Latin Vulgate, and then Wycliffe translated the Vulgate, so he came up with giants, and no one's been able to get off the error train. And so they all have giants. And so this person was trying to justify the giants. And the proof that it's giants is that the 5 Bible translations before the King James all had giants. The Vulgate has giants. The Septuagint has giants. Therefore, it's giants. He says, who in the hell knows what a Nephilim is? A Nephilim. But we sure know what giants are. And this idiot wasn't smart enough to say, but there never has been a race of giants. Yeah, we know what giants are, and there never has been a race of giants. So if God said that, your God is a nincompoop. All right. So there were, for a period of time, Nephilim existing in the region. Haya, Ba, Ha, Eretz. God is speaking about the descendants of Adam. He's using Ha-Adam here. He's not using Ish, individuals.
No.
He's not using Hanak, mortal man.
No, because then it could be a race.
There you go.
Using Adam.
Right. He's not using mortals. He's using Ha-Adam. the descendants of Adam. They lived in this region. We'll talk to you this evening.